Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's currently Tuesday, July 26, 2011, and I am knocking all sorts of things off my desk because it is day 9 daily number 329, and I've received a haircut. Oh, I'm very excited about my haircut. Yes, look at this. Oh my god, look at this wave. You could surf right off my forehead and try to avoid the dangers of my bangs. Look at how treacherous they are. And yet so smooth and exciting. The X Games could be hosted on my new haircut. This is awesome, guys. It's time for some Zerg vs. Terran action. This is going to be the last daily in Zerg Week. Now, normally we construct Zerg Week around logic. But previously we constructed it around just kind of when the dailies had time to actually occur. Because we began them on Wednesday with Destiny's ZVP. We went to Sen's ZVZ. And then I did a Mono Battle, and then I did Fun Day Monday, and now we conclude with Morrow Zerg vs. Terran. And you know what? We are going to look at one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. How to play a game out normally. It's a 42-minute long game that is very typical. There's not that much that goes on, right? That you haven't seen a lot of times before. But a kind of funny thing happens. I don't know if this is the case with you, but it certainly is the case with me. Where when I am away from playing a game, or from playing StarCraft 2 for a long period of time, like I have not really gotten the chance to dive in and do all my fun little Zergy strategies. And then I come back after like a month of, having to graduate grad school. And then when I sit down and play, for some reason, Standard feels scary and it feels weird. Well, any play feels weird for that matter, but I always sit down and I say, well, I'm going to play Standard, and I just have all these questions, and there's all these holes and all these leaks, and it feels so bumpy, and it feels so gross. So we're going to look at a lot of that today, and we're going to break it into the the early game, mid game, and late game, for, of course, parts 1, 2, and 3. So make sure you have your questions ready, so that way we can begin getting a sense of what people would like to focus on. So when we're going to focus on the mid game, let's see what sorts of things that people would like the emphasis to be upon. I am now refreshing the infamous Markio question grabber, which for any of you who don't know, the way that this works is you type Dear Day 9 and then the question. So I'll even type it in chat, Dear Day 9, how are you? And then I should see my very own question. There it is. There's the Dear Day 9. Okay, great. Keep in mind, this is the opening game stuff. This is the opening game. So here's a good question from Ice Beast, Day 9. How many Spore Spine Crawlers do you put up and when? This is a good topic to bring up. Obviously, this is more of a long-term idea, but in the early game, that is an essential question. When do I plant down the various types of defenses that I will need? Let's see here. We're just going to be focusing on early game. Early game. Here we go. Here's a great question from MJD. Would you please try to bring attention to what times they stop worker production and why? Because again, that fundamental question of Zerg is, am I going to be building a larva or am I going to be building a drone to drone or to larva? All these kinds of things. What is the best way to scout a walled-in enemy in the early game? That question was by Tommy Cass. We have Ferrum Divertus, who says defense or offense. Which is one to choose for the early game? I said these both at the same time because I have a little bit to deal with each other, just sort of checking it out. How important are Lyotes in the early game? Very important. How do I hold off a Marine tank push and a bunker rush from DNX Crypto and the Falcon? Okay, cool. So a lot of it is how do I figure out what he's doing? This is the sort of theme that I'm seeing at the start. How do I appropriately build defenses based upon what I'm seeing? And of course, how do I get those drones out? How do I get them dronies out? And we're going to look at this quite en detail, en exclusive detail. I made a word up. Exclusive? What the? What? Alright, let's go ahead and dive into the game. Before we do, just wanted to briefly note that I'm going to be at MLG this weekend. I know it's Europe Week, and all you Europeans are probably not going to be booking a new ticket to go to MLG Anaheim, but I certainly am going to MLG Anaheim, and I don't even have to fly. I just have to get in a car. Let's dive right into the game. And actually, wait, allow me to be responsible. Allow me to clock. No, not clock. No, yes, clock. I want to go to clock, and I want to do stopwatch, and I want to start. Because I'm trying to make sure, because it's supposed to be an hour daily broken into 20-minute segments, and I keep doing an hour daily broken into 30 to 35-minute segments, resulting in me finishing like way into lunch. So we're gonna work on my hypoglycemia. So here we go. We have Mouse Sports Morrow in the south position. He's slowing down. My God, Morrow, you're going nuts. As usual, sending out the early scout. As usual, turning on the early volume. So this is a very long game. I said it's 42 minutes long. We're going to look at the first 8 minutes or so with quite a good bit of detail. So in particular, what I want to look at is a lot of the early drone counts when things get stopped and started and all that fun shenaniganry. We do see an Overlord on 9. Now, I will say one thing. If you're doing like a pool on 11, like what Destiny does, or maybe a 10 pool, it is really important that you can understand the difference between these 9 Overlord, 10 Overlord, 12 Overlord after double extractor trick, you know, these kinds of things. Here, I don't really mind. We're not going to see, ant, die, got him, killed him, boom. I'm going to be doing that a lot in this show, by the way. In this game, we're going to see Morrow go for a fairly typical early expand. So if you're early expanding, just kind of build the Overlord in a way that feels best to you. Because there still is contention between the, should I 9 Overlord, or 10 Overlord, or 10 Overlord and then Extractor Trick, or Extractor Trick and then 11 Overlord. So, because I want the focus of today's daily to be on standard and standard play, an important thing to note is that the most important aspect of standard play actually becomes economy management. It becomes when you do all this fun stuff up here. Because what inevitably happens, this is actually so important that I will drink coffee from my chicken mug. I like chickens. If you're doing something like, let's say you watch Destiny's 4 Infestor Hit Squad, and you're like, I want to be like Destiny. I will get the 4 Infestor Hit Squad. You're kind of going for a number. 4 Infestors in an Overlord, right? So you just load it up and you do it. Or if you're doing something like, I'm going to drop tanks on his cliff and try to kill off his natural expansion. It's like a play. I'm going to get a bunch of Mutalos and try to kill off all his workers as a surprise attack. When you're doing standard, you'll notice that almost all standard plays don't really have any cute tactics to them or any huge amounts of harassment. You're just building a lot of basic good armies with good upgrades. So it all comes down to economy management. You must have a good economy management. Otherwise, things will feel horrible. That's why I'm certain for many of you, when you do your unorthodox strategy that you came up with yourself, it feels a lot better than when you try to do one of these standard things and trying to obey the rules that you may have gleaned from them. None of it means anything if your economy management is not very, very good at the start of the game. So I'm going to begin obsessing about all these things like our droning, our defensing. And let's actually go to just the Morrow cam for the early game. It looks like he is scouting the depths of the map. No. Don't look there, Morrow. We want to come back here. Here we go. Alright, so we do see a drone moving out on 14. This is pretty typical to send this drone out a little bit early and then to send another follow-up drone to build a hatch on 15. We can easily conclude why this is true in just a moment. Because, hey, we can have this drone spot his SCV. Like, let's say this SCV was not in the middle. Let's say the SCV was here. When our drone comes down the ramp, we spot Mr. SCV here and we can begin whacking away at him, securing us an earlier expansion. But I still want to note, I think the most important thing that I have not sufficiently freaked out about, this guy is our 14th drone. Where is he? Yeah, look, here we go. We just built a drone on 14. And there he goes. Right before that 14th drone hatches, we send out a drone. This is the sort of timing that a lot of people will mess up. They'll just be like, I saw a Morrow scout, I saw a Morrow expand, and then they'll just scout on like 10, and they'll expand maybe 15, maybe the expand timing is correct, but the scout timing is off. And by off, I mean awful. Because what happens with your economy is that you have all these bumps. You don't quite have the money that you need at the appropriate times. and it's a very tragic thing. So let's just focus a little bit more on the early game stuffs. Here we go. We see a hatchery going down. Okay, great. And we see the drone doing a cross-map scout. He's checking up in here. And notice, 1 drone built, 2 drone built, right? We built our hatch on 15. Or, no, we actually built a hatch on 16. That's pretty uncommon. But the important thing to note is that we're building drones up to 16. So he's building his hatch a little later than I actually would have thought. But then here it comes. An extra drone. Now, the reason that I love obsessing about these extra drones is people have kind of discovered that drones are incredibly good units. They're like a little bit worse than Zerglings, but not by much. So, what players used to have in their logic bag was, oh no, oh my god, 2 Raxes are so hard to hold off, I hate bunker pressure. Let me get my hatch and pool up way earlier. But now people are starting to realize is, hell, let me get a whole bunch more drones out, get everything later, and then I'll just try to be a little bit better with my drone control. Maybe I'll lose some drones, maybe I won't. But when my pool is done, I'll have a stellar economy. Because again, it's about economy management. Economy management. So these extra drones, building these extra drones is actually quite essential. And we see that this timing is quite good by Morrow. He arrives here before his opponent will actually end up having a wall off. And we see Morrow immediately go scout for the gas. And look at this. Another drone. He's up to 17. He has not built a pool yet, and he is on 17 food. He's going to continue to check this out. He sees a bunker here getting constructed in his main mineral line. And this is the moment in the early game where many will begin to fall apart. Note, though, that we're going to see Morrow really not pull very many units off. And the Overlord begins to move forward. We have a drone here scouting around. It'll die, probably. It might not. But in terms of defending this early push at the start, just brings 3 drones off. Not many. Everything else still mining, calmly building a pool. A little bit of a late pool, but pretty typical nonetheless. And look, there he goes. And notice that he is more than willing to attack the bunker. Now we're starting to stop a little bit of economy management discussion. We're talking a little bit more about, oh, look, how do you hold off a bunker? Hit the bunker, for God's sake. You can't repair it yet. Bunkers die very quickly. Look at the rate at which the health is depleting here. And there, Select tries to add on a little bit more, but, you know, no big deal. Overlord is moving forward and using the high ground as a little bit of an edge. And more drones have been made. We're at 18 of 18, another Overlord. And notice, hey, those 2 extra drones we made after our spawning pool, they're the ones coming out into the fray. Very important numbers. We have 1 drone scouting. All right, scout 132 with me. 1 drone scouted at 14. 3 drones move down to kill the bunker. 2 extra drones move out only after we start our spawning pool. That means at all point in time, we had at least 12 drones mining. That is huge. If you imagine kind of going, oh my gosh, a bunker rush, let me try to defend, and bringing off, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 drones immediately, suddenly you have cut your economy by more than half. That's very big in the early game. And generally, what you'll end up feeling is that it feels like you have way more gas. That's the feeling that you get. It's a little counterintuitive at first, but if you think about it, when you make all these funky plays to defend with all your drones early on, that's less and less and less minerals. So when you get your gas at the usual time, you start getting the usual amount of gas, but you have way fewer minerals. So you just feel this huge gross excess of gas. So generally, if you have too much gas, think to yourself, well, gee, maybe I'm just not getting enough drones onto my minerals, or I'm pulling drones off too early. Very simple, easy defense. And look at this. Doesn't even try to kill off the bunker. Just goes back and mines. I actually think you should take these drones on attack right now, but very typical junk. Drone is still in the main. Drone's still at the front. 1 gets shot at. He just pulls it back. Not going to do anything nutty and suicide-y. Gonna just pick this guy off. Get him, yeah. So now we see Morrow getting himself extra queens. Notice no geysers have yet been thrown down. We do see something here. I mean, it's a factory. This is actually what Morrow ended up seeing. And these Zerglings are actually quite late. Now, I'm going to do something that, you know, technically I shouldn't do that much, but I just want to point this out, that a lot of times you will again see, oh, okay, he held off the bunker rush and he makes some Zerglings. But when did these Zerglings get made? The reason I kind of let the game continue on is because it's so easy to hit a point where you just go, what did he make? As opposed to when did he make it? What did he make? 4 Zerglings. Oh, what should I make? I guess I should make 4 Zerglings. But as we back this up, we want to find out exactly when these 4 Zerglings were made. Because economy management is so key in the early game. We already saw that he's building a lot of drones, but look, the pool finishes. And he does indeed build these Zerglings right when the pool finishes. But as he's killing off this Marine, what we're going to see is, look, he's just going to go right back to droning. Right on back to droning. Ha 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 ha. Drone, 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 drone. Drone, 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 drone. Now, at about 5 minutes and 30 seconds to 5 minutes and 45 seconds is when not Blue Flame Hellions, is when a double Hellion should arrive at our front door. That's just a little number to note. So we see the late gas going down. This gas is not, well, it's not extremely late. It's a little later than normal. It's around 28 food. And we see the double queen going to pop out. Big question of economy management. Do I add creep tumors or do I add larvae? And the answer is creep tumor at one, larva at the other. And what we're actually seeing Morrow do is he's getting a roach warren as his defensive tool. You'll note that Morrow is essentially completely defended in the early game just by virtue of what he scouted, a barracks with fast gas. If for some reason he scouted like 2 barracks, we might see an even later gas, or we might see even earlier spine crawlers and this kind of thing. But because we saw the fast gas, we know that basically it's going to be low barracks pressure, high everything else pressure, like factories, like starports, those other 2 unit producing structures. Nothing too scary or out of the ordinary, he said, trying to make sure that he wasn't going over on time. Yes. So this Roach Warren opening is really good. A lot of people love to get early roaches for defense. They acknowledge, oh yeah, my Hellions not going to be very good against your roaches. Obviously true and all this good business. But again, in terms of economy management, we need to get our extractor up much later and favor these early drones. If we get ourselves a lot of roaches a little too early, we can be battered in economy. Technically, by the way, it is possible to get like an early roach warren and to be okay. But we're going to see that Morrow is just in a hugely comfortable spot. He's going to be so freaking comfortable. And look at this. He builds his roach warren essentially when he can afford it. But look, all drones. All drones. The Zerglings that Morrow had, they all pulled back. This actually shocked me. This is very, very unusual, I think. Most of the time people get 4 Zerglings and they leave them here and then they go and they poke, poke, poke and then okay, run back here and I'm going to leave 3 over here and I'm going to leave 1 here to scout for the expansion and let me poke again. He went up, poked, saw Hellions, pulls right on back again. Despite the fact that Morrow has had, I would say, reasonable amounts of early Harris arrive at his front door, he is just looking and feeling completely calm during this game. Now, to note, around 5 minutes to 30 to 5 minutes and 45 seconds is when I said you need to worry about Hellions getting to your front door. Okay, well, it was 6 minutes because this is a larger map. Still, that's a useful timing to note. About 5:45, I guess I'd skew a little more towards. But if you're in something like Metalopolis, close by air positions, it'll arrive quite a bit sooner. But my goodness, only 2 roaches, all drones, non-stop larva injects, and most importantly, no additional geysers. No additional geysers. Tried to spread a little creep, it didn't work. And look at this. We've made a full 2 creep tumors out at this point in time, but we've only really made drones. It's very easy to go into, oh my gosh, I'm going to build non-stop larva mode, but we're seeing that not only is Morrow broke, but he's also spending all of his larva. He just now had a little surge there. But it looks like around 53 food. Now we're going to begin adding on a bunch more geysers. Around 50 food. And is making basically roaches as he can afford it, but not that many more. He's not going nuts with any sort of wall off. I do think that the roach warren could be planted a little bit closer to here, Or even something more like here and then having the queen there. I prefer that a little bit more, but Morrow is going to be holding back a good amount. There, his geysers pop up. We're going to see Morrow do a very cool little transition coming up. And I'd like to note, though, that Morrow is actually quite safe at this point in time. The one thing that would actually worry me a little bit is the fact that Morrow doesn't know if Banshees are coming or not. As we can see, Select doesn't have Banshees coming, but a good way to generally spot this is to have the Overlord here, check, or to do something like find out any way if you see he's getting an expansion or not. Because if he's getting an expansion, you just immediately cross off all crazy harassment that could be coming up. But this did bug me a little bit in this game, that I felt like there wasn't proper taking into account of the Banshee possible transition. Other than the fact that Select just doesn't do that very much, but I highly doubt that you're going to be playing against Select a lot on the ladder and trying to use that knowledge there. But what we see anyways that Morrow does that I liked a lot is he's going to go for a double evolution chamber timing. Double evolution chamber timing, still making nothing but drones, and still adding on a few roaches as needed. He's up to 8 drones, or 8 roaches already, which is fairly uncommon. Generally, you see a player get 5 really fast and then stop. But instead, what we see Morrow do is get 2, and then get 2, and then get 2, and then get 2. And he's getting his plus melee upgrades and immediately taking an expansion. We also see a 3rd queen coming out. A Banshee should have arrived a little bit earlier if your opponent did want to get that. But you'll still note the 3rd queen, the Evo chambers, do provide some line of defense against that. So that will essentially wrap up the early game. And the important things to note at this point in time are that, you know what? Morrow made almost all drones and gassed very late and was very, very careful about not letting anything interrupt that. When he went to get roaches, he didn't get 6 as fast as he could. He got kind of a late gas, then a roach warren, and then he dished out some roaches, built a couple more drones, dished out some roaches, built a couple more drones, and so on and so forth. So this allows Select allows Morrow a really good springboard for the mid-game, which will be the topic that we'll come into next. I stop at 8 minutes and 42 seconds. We're going to take a brief break and grab some more questions and topics in that break. So whatever you do, don't go away. Part 2, the mid-game of Select vs. Morrow, is coming up right after this.